So before break, you guys solved a bunch of the 3D puzzles that you created, and we collected some quantitative or number data about how long it took you to complete those puzzles. Today, I'm going to help show you how to analyze that data using Google Sheets. So if you open up your Google Sheet in Google Classroom, you'll see the sheet that looks just like this. Over in column A, we have the puzzle number broken down by periods and team numbers. Then we have the data. Here in this section right here, we have the number of groups that completed puzzles in each time range, minutes, and seconds. You guys gave me data on exactly how many minutes and seconds it took you to solve each puzzle, but I categorize that data into these ranges just to make it a little bit easier for us to analyze and look at the data. So for example, P1T1 created this puzzle. It took two groups between 0 and 59 seconds to solve that puzzle. It took one group between 2 minutes and 2 minutes and 59 seconds to solve that puzzle. And it took one group between 3 minutes and 3 minutes and 59 seconds to solve P1T1's puzzle. So in total, 4 groups tried to solve their puzzle. We can see that the data goes from period 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 in order. Over here on the right-hand side, we have some questions that you're going to answer. The question is right here, and then you're just going to type your answers in the boxes over here. The first one says, how many groups completed puzzles in each time range? And we have all of the time ranges right here. So if I go to the 0 to 59 second column, I could go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and count these numbers all the way down. But there's a chance I'll make a mistake and it seems like a waste of time. So instead, I am going to help or use Google Sheets to help me find the answer in a fast way using something called formulas. So right down here at the bottom of column B, because again, we're looking at 0 to 59 seconds, I'm going to click in the very last box. I wrote sum next to it already. In order to find the sum, I'm going to put in the formula equals SUM beginning parentheses, which is shift and 9. Now I want to select what data to include. I want to include all of the data from row 42, so I'll click, hold, and drag it up all the way to my first piece of data, which was in row 3. Notice how I'm not putting in the label. I don't want that included in my data. I just want the number of groups included. So I have that whole area selected. And when I hit enter, it's going to tell me that there were 54 groups that completed puzzles within that time range. I can go ahead and do that for column C as well. So again, I'll put equal sum beginning of parentheses, that's shift and 9. I'll click the very bottom data point, hold, and drag all the way up to the top, excluding the label here. If I put enter, I can see that 17 groups completed a puzzle within the time frame of 60 seconds to a minute and 59 seconds. You're going to do that process for each one of these ranges, and you're going to put your information over here. We'll just put the first pieces of information to help us out a little bit later. You're going to add the rest on your own. So 54 and 17. 54 and 17. All right, like I said, you'll continue that process and you'll find the sums for the other ranges. Question number 2 says, in what time range were the most number of puzzles solved? So again, after you find your data over here, you'll be able to tell me what time range had the most puzzles solved just by looking at what you entered here. In what time range were the least number of puzzles solved? Again, you'll be able to use the data that you put right here next to these labels to help you solve number 3. Number 4, based on the data, what teams made the most difficult puzzle? Explain your reasoning. So notice that it says team, or in parentheses S for teams. You may have one or multiple teams that are tied to make the most difficult puzzle. You're going to explain why you think it's the most difficult puzzle over here. Number 5, what period made the most difficult puzzles? So again, you're going to have to look at your data over here, and you're going to decide what period. Was it period 1, period 2, period 3? They're all divided by lines. Which one made the most difficult puzzles, and why you think that their puzzles were the most difficult? Number 6, according to the data, what team's puzzles was attempted the most times? You'll just have to come over here and look at the data and see how many groups completed each one of the puzzles. The one with the highest number is going to be the puzzle that was attempted the most times. Number 7, what period completed the most puzzles? This is another chance for us to use that sum formula. So for example, over here, period 1, I could count 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could count all the attempts that period 1 made and get my answer by adding them up. Or I can use a formula. So over here in H10, I'm going to put equal sum beginning parentheses, so shift number 9, and then I'm going to click and drag all of the data for period 1. I'll hit enter, and notice how it tells me 36 attempts were made in period 1. I can go ahead and do that same process for the other periods and figure out what period completed the most puzzles. Period 1 tested engineering's period 1 puzzles. Period 2 tested period 2 engineering puzzles. So whatever number we get here will tell us what period completed the most puzzles. Finally, you're going to insert a bar graph to display the data on how many groups completed puzzles in each time frame. So you're going to look at the data up here, and you're going to use this information. Our graph isn't going to be complete because we don't have all of the information yet, but that's okay. We can at least run through an example of how you're going to create a bar graph. So first of all, I'm going to click and hold. I'll drag down to show all of the time ranges, and then I'm going to click over one column so that I include all of my data and all of the time ranges. Then I'm going to go up to Insert, and I'll go down to Chart. So Google Sheets is automatically going to put in what kind of bar graph they think is correct. A pie chart really isn't the best graph for our use because we're not looking at percentages. So over here, we're going to change it from pie chart to a bar chart like that. Next up, we need to customize the data somewhat. Let me make this a little bit smaller so you can see it better. There we go. Sheets automatically put in a title for us based on the titles that were above this data, but it doesn't really make sense for our graph. So we need to go in and we need to change it. So up here in the biggest font is going to be the whole title of the graph. We don't want it to be type answers in column versus questions. We want it to explain the data that we were looking at. So if I click on that text, it's going to let me change it. I'm going to change it to the number of groups that completed puzzles in each time range. That really tells the reader what our graph is all about. Next up over here, this is the y-axis. It's the one that is vertical or goes up and down. We don't want it to be something about typing answers. We want it to show that this is the number of groups that completed the puzzles in these time frames. So let's go ahead and click on that font. Again, if I click on it twice, it's going to allow me to edit it. And I'm just going to put number of groups there. Over here, this is the x-axis. It's the one that goes horizontally or across. We don't want it to say questions. Instead, we want it to say time to complete. And we'll probably want to add in there that it is minutes, seconds. That's the format that we used. So they know that, oh, this means 4 minutes, 0 seconds, or this means 4 minutes and 59 seconds. So now someone who is reading our graph is going to have a good idea of what it is supposed to be showing us. I'm going to go ahead and make it bigger for you. You guys can do this so that and you can move it around wherever you want on your page as long as it's not covering your questions. And now that I made it bigger, you can see all of our titles and labels show up nicely. One other thing I like to do to make my graph a little bit easier for the reader to understand and to read is to add some more labels to the actual bars themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on my first bar there. And right over here, I can customize some information. I want to add in data labels. If I click that box, notice how it adds the number on here. So the reader might have estimated this is 40, this is 60, maybe somewhere in between there was like 52, or they don't have to estimate like that because now the data numbers are right on there, easy for them to read. Once you have completed all of your questions and you've inserted your bar graph with all of the data showing, you can go ahead and turn in this assignment.